Hey, Andrew at Prime Medical Training. Welcome, and today we're going to be talking about what should be in your office's first aid kit. What are the essentials? So I'm going to break it down for you, give you my kind of 2 cents and perspective from my background as a paramedic. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe or like this channel, and so you can stay up to date on more content that we're producing and support us. We would really appreciate it. So we're going to take a look at the first aid kit that we have personally in our office today. I got this off of Amazon. It says it's like 250 pieces. It's a 50-person kit. I don't really know what that means, but you know, I think honestly this is your best option though, to buy something that's already kind of has all the supplies in it, as opposed to like going to Walmart and, you know, grabbing a bunch of miscellaneous supplies and putting your own kit together. I think this just comes out to be cheaper. As a medic, I've done a lot of things in my time, and we're very limited in the resources that we have. So working out of an ambulance, obviously we have less stuff than what you would find in a hospital, and so paramedics generally have to be a lot more resourceful with how we make things happen. You know, there's no cookie cutter things that come into us. We're not dealing in a sterile environment. We're dealing in a, it could be in somebody's house, in somebody's car, whatever. So my point is, we just have to improvise all the time. And so I've learned how to do more with less. And so when I look at a first aid kit, there's a ton of stuff in here, and it's all helpful, but you know, I could probably do the same thing with less items. So for example, one of my all-time favorite products is going to be a triangular bandage or a cravat. And these things, generally when you look at a triangular bandage, you think of it as something that you can you know, splint your arm. So if you broke your arm or sprained your arm, you put it in a sling. And that is the traditional way of using this, but I mean, I've used it for so many things. Like I've used it for you know, wound packing, so like the stabbing or a gunshot wound, and I'll take it and I'll pack their wound with this. I've used it for as a tourniquet, and so you know, I'll wrap it around an appendage, and I'll find a pencil or a pen or something like that, and I'll twist, and I can use it as a tourniquet. I've used these as restraints, and so like when I'm dealing with combative patients or patients that are on some sort of drug that's just making them out of their mind, I can use this to help restrain their arms or legs from kicking and hitting me. And so triangular bandages, like one of my all-time favorite things, and it's so simple, but it can do a lot. You know, in these kits too, you've got some cold compresses, which are fine and handy. You know, you squeeze them, they pop and they turn cold. Some gloves. Gloves are definitely an important thing, especially if you're ending up dealing with bodily fluids like blood or secretions or things like that. So I would highly recommend that. You have some tongue depressors that oftentimes come in kits. I have never used a tongue depressor in my life. I'm not really sure what kind of application that would be. So that's one of those things where you get these 250-piece kits, and a lot of it's like this kind of stuff. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, whatever. So not very applicable. Q-tips, again, I could definitely do without Q-tips. I've never used one in my life in a call that I've run. So, but then there's other great things that they put in here, maybe excessively so. But you have eye pads, you have gauze pads, you have sterile, you know, burn sheets and things like that. Those are good things for sure. ABD pads. ABD pads are just like really absorbent pads, usually used for larger traumas. They never expire, so it doesn't hurt to have it. I usually break medical issues into one of two categories. Either it's going to be an injury related issue or it's a medical related issue. Medical being like a stroke or a heart attack or diabetes or something like that. So it's good to have things to handle both of those issues. So far, all I've talked about, the pads, the cold compresses, the gloves, the triangular bandage, those are all injury related. But then you move into the medical related issues, and you have things like antibiotic ointments or burn creams. That still would kind of be related to trauma, injury related stuff. But usually these kits will come with like a ton of things like like aspirin or ibuprofen, and so those are good to have. I mean, it gets you by. Things that are generally not in a first aid kit that would probably be good that I keep in my personal first aid kit would be Benadryl, or even like a child's ibuprofen or Motrin, something that's liquid for people that can't take pills. Those are good ideas to have. Tape is always great. A roller gauze is super helpful. I would have probably more of these, and this is like I think like 1.5 inches. I usually prefer the 2 to 3 inches. They're just more functional. So you can get a kit like this. It comes with a bunch of stuff, but in my opinion, I would probably beef it up with some additional supplies if I was really wanting to get crazy. So that's kind of like what's in a first aid kit. Now, we have this as well. I don't know who sent this to us, but it's a Stop the Bleed kit. And if you want to have a Stop the Bleed kit in your office, that's great. But most of the supplies that are in here, I can do with the supplies that were in this basic first aid kit. This is just above and beyond. It's more specialized, so you have like a dedicated tourniquet. You have these, this is another style of tourniquet. It's like this long rubber band. I don't love these. I think they're cheap, and so they're popular because they're cheap, but there's a reason why they're cheap, and the problems that you're gonna run into in the real world is that if you were having to apply a tourniquet to yourself, it's really difficult to try to like wrap this. If you had to apply a tourniquet to your arm, to do this one-handed, it's not super easy. Not only that, but this is like this silicone-y type material, and so you imagine getting blood all over it, and now it becomes really slick. It's hard to get traction. I'm just telling you, they're not the greatest, and there's a reason why the military doesn't use them, because they don't work well. And so I would stick with the traditional cat tourniquets if I was in your position. Some other types of tourniquets would be like a compression bandage. This one is generic, but they're commonly known as Israeli bandages, so those work really well, and I would recommend those. And then this also comes with a bunch of different types of gauze down in here, which is meant for wound packing. So you can wound pack, and then you can also apply a tourniquet. I'll say this about tourniquets: they're great, they're lifesavers, but in reality, I personally have never had to apply a tourniquet to somebody, and I've dealt with some pretty gory trauma stuff. It's just, there are very few instances where that's necessitated. Amputations and things of that nature may necessitate them, but I mean, I've even dealt with gunshot wounds and stabbings, and I've still never, some direct pressure, some wound packing has done the job. And so, it's always good to be prepared, but just know that like the probability of you having to use that is not likely. And as I said, all those tools, those are very specific to trauma, but I could use the basic first aid kit and accomplish the same goals with the basic first aid kit and the things that are in this kind of like $20, $30 first aid kit. So But anyway, that gives you an idea of some things to have and to make sure that you're well prepared in the event of a trauma or medical related emergency. If you have any questions or thoughts or think of things that I didn't mention that should be in a first aid kit, I'd love to hear about them. Please drop them in the comments below. This is Andrew again with Prime Medical Training. We'll talk with you soon.